next topic, the truth.
The truth.
And Donald Trump's relationship with the truth. Much has been made about how he exaggerates claims. But let's just talk about some of the examples of whether or not he was telling the truth. Tony Ann, I'll start with you. So he said that on 9/11 there were thousands and thousands of people in New Jersey celebrating.
Yes,
That
I
has
did
been
hear him say that.
proven not to be true.
Well, I think what he actually said is that he was in Jersey City, Jersey on 9/11. And yes, like you said, he saw thousands of people celebrating. But he didn't get into specifics. Did he see it on TV celebrating? Did he look out the window and see them celebrating?
Sure, but either way, there weren't thousands and thousands of people celebrating in New Jersey.
There was a lot of people celebrating. In
TV.
Manhattan alone, there was over a dozen that was arrested because they were celebrating.
People have made the point, Paulie, that 8 people celebrating on a rooftop in New Jersey is different than thousands and thousands. And in fact, the Attorney General for New Jersey, the mayor of Paterson, the police chief of Jersey City have said we were on guard. Did not happen. So are you comfortable with Donald Trump's relationship with the truth?
I'm 100% comfortable with it. When San Bernardino happened, it's the first terrorist attack on American soil since 9/11. Let me tell you something. It brought back a lot of bad memories for all of us, okay? Especially New Yorkers. I'm a New Yorker. I watched as those towers were coming down, okay? And 9/11 to me, I don't care about upsetting a few Muslims or upsetting a few people, okay? Because when I think of 9/11 every day, okay, I think of the firemen's faces, the looks on their faces as they were running into the towers to save people, okay? They were rushing towards death, okay? And I think of all of the little boys and the little girls, okay, that lost their heroes that morning, their moms and their dads. I think of that, okay? That's what I care about, and that's what Donald Trump cares about. I think of all the wives and the moms and the dads that for probably weeks and months and years, or maybe even today, are still crying themselves to sleep. That's what 9/11 means to us. So I could care less about a few Muslims or a few people that are upset. I could care less about people saying they don't like Donald Trump's tone, okay? We need a true leader in this country, and Donald Trump is that leader.
I grew up in New York City, not far from the World Trade Center. In 2001, I lived in New Jersey, about 20 miles from the World Trade Center, and watched them burning. And I also watched on television people in, whether it was Jersey City or Paterson, cities to the east of where I live, celebrating in the streets. What he said, whether it was thousands or hundreds or tons of people, happened. And I watched it on television at the time, and it was common knowledge in New Jersey at that time and in the metropolitan area that people were celebrating what happened in New York.
So just to be clear, he said, and it is the quote, he said thousands and thousands of people were celebrating. And to your point, I mean, if I'm understanding you, it doesn't matter to you what the number is.
I wouldn't swear that it was thousands, but I would swear that there were a lot of people in the streets, in cities, right along New York City, in New Jersey, that were celebrating what happened on September 11th.
He didn't say, I was in Jersey City and saw people in Jersey, and thousands of people in Jersey City. He just said, I was in Jersey City. Where was he? Was he in one of his offices? Was he in a hotel room? Like some of us were at home, turning on the TV, and we saw images in the Gaza Strip that people in Palestine.
Yes,
there was crowds of thousands of people.
The Gaza Strip is different than Jersey City. So people,
I know, but there was
he's
some
not
there,
making
there
that
was some
distinction.
here.
When you say thousands of people, I mean, these people come to our country, and they still came and they cheered when those planes went through those towers. They're in our country. I don't care if it was one person, I don't care if it was 2 people.
Exactly.
They were in the streets cheering, and we should respect these people who took down the towers, and how many people got killed. So he says thousands of people.
Yeah.
Thousands of people all over the world, but you know what? I feel a lot safer knowing that Mr. Trump will be our president.
As far as the truth goes, we've got people in positions of power who I know for a fact are liars. Liars. I watch the TV, my president comes on the TV and he lies to me. I know he's lying. He lies all the time.
Look, France.
I don't believe any one of them, not one. I believe Donald.
Exactly.
I'm telling you, he says what I'm thinking.
Exactly.
Never been involved in politics, never had an interest in any of it. Now suddenly he is resonating. He is resonating with the people, and he's speaking our minds, our minds. When the pundits and the experts and all the people who are supposed to be in the know and know all this stuff, and they're so great, I know some of them, maybe not all, but some of them are lying to me straight to my face, and I am so sick of it.